the hospital lab suddenly exploded, trapping me and the campus goddess Lucinu in the fiery inferno. My boyfriend Siasen heartlessly abandoned me, choosing to save Lucinu first. I didn't stop him, nor did I beg, letting him leave me behind in the raging flames, because in my past life, I revealed I was the dean's daughter and used his future as leverage to save myself, while Lucinu perished in the fire, later. He inherited my family's fortune and couldn't wait to lock me, pregnant and nearing my due date, inside the laboratory, setting it ablaze to kill both me and my unborn child. Faced with my desperate pleas, he sneered and said, "Zhongwani, if it weren't for you threatening me with the Zhong family back then, how could Sinyu have died so tragically? The suffering Sinyu endured in that fire, I'll make you repay 100-fold." When I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn back to the day when Lu Sinyu, the campus goddess, and I were both trapped in the fire. "Hello everyone, welcome to Glimmer of Love." Bang! With a loud crash, the cabinet slammed onto me, the pain instantly jolting me awake. Ignoring the excruciating pain, I struggled to see clearly through the thick smoke, but it stunned my eyes shut, covering my mouth. I coughed violently, then came waves of cramping pain in my lower abdomen. Instinctively, I clutched my belly. Hold on, baby, yet my once swollen belly, nearly ready for birth, was now unnaturally flat. How could this happen? Before I could react, urgent shouts rang in my ears. "Sinyu, Sinyu, are you okay? Why does this voice sound so familiar?" Immediately after, Lu Sinyu's faint voice came from the other side. "Siasen, save me." I lifted my head in disbelief and saw Siasen half kneeling beside Lu Sinyu, frantically moving the table that had fallen on her. Watching the two before me, I could barely breathe. Wait, hadn't I just been locked in the lab by Siasen and burned alive? And my child? At this thought, I curled up in agony, trembling uncontrollably. At the lab entrance, my colleague Wang Shinro screamed hysterically, "Siasen, are you insane? Save Wani first, she's your girlfriend." The scene before me was so vivid that I realized, I wasn't dreaming. I've been reborn. I had been reborn to the day when Lu Sinyu, the campus goddess, and I were trapped in the fire together. With a creak, Siasen finally moved the table aside, without even glancing at me. He scooped Lu Sinyu into his arms and rushed out. I smiled bitterly to myself. Wasn't it just like this in my past life? I was his girlfriend, yet his eyes were only for Lu Sinyu. Indeed, Lu Sinyu was so beautiful, not just a goddess-like figure in our institute, but also rumored to be the heiress of Lu Medical Group. Even if Siasen wasn't single, he must have fallen for her long ago. I struggled to stand up, but was pinned down by the cabinet, my calf bleeding profusely from glass cuts. Completely immobilized, Siasen seemed to notice me only then, his eyes devoid of concern, filled only with disgust. Frowning, he said, "Sinyu is the heiress of the Lu family. If anything happens to her, the entire hospital will be doomed. I'm doing this for the greater good. You're not seriously injured. Wait here, I'll send Sinyu out first, then come back to rescue you." I laughed again. If I hadn't been reborn once, I might have believed his so-called "for the greater good." I was covered in blood. Yet in his words, it was not seriously injured. Wang Shinro didn't hesitate and tried to rush into the fire, but fortunately, her colleagues behind her held her back tightly. "Shinro, calm down. The lab is full of flammable and explosive materials. It's dangerous." Yes, according to my memory, this lab would probably explode in about 15 minutes. In my previous life, after being rescued, I immediately urged everyone to leave quickly, which saved their lives. Originally, Siasen wanted to go back to save Lu Sinyu, but seeing the growing flames, he ultimately didn't re-enter. So in this life, how could I believe him when he said he'd come back to save me later? I knew he wouldn't, but I also didn't want to burden those who truly cared about me. I struggled to stay upright on the ground, using all my strength to shout outside, "Shinro, don't come in, it's about to explode here, run." Hearing me shout about the explosion, Siasen's steps faltered as he held Lu Sinyu in his arms. He turned back to look at me with disbelief, his gaze icy as if staring at a stranger. "Zhongwani, how did I only just realize how scheming you are? We could have waited just half an hour longer. Once the fire department arrived, they could have controlled the flames. With you saying this, how will our colleagues outside view me? Can't you learn a thing or two from Sinyu and show a little more kindness?" I was so angry at his sanctimonious act that I laughed bitterly. "When you were sleeping with me, why didn't you say I was scheming?" Seeing this, Lu Sinyu gently tugged at Siasen's collar and said weakly, "Siasen, I feel terrible." Hearing Lu Sinyu's voice, Siasen immediately shifted his gaze from me to her. "Hold on, Sinyu. I won't let anything happen to you." With that, he carried her away without looking back. I mustered all my strength to push open the heavy cabinet. Waves of excruciating pain surged through me, but, compared to the agony I endured in my past life, This was nothing. Witnessing this scene, Wang Xinro collapsed to the ground in disbelief. Xie, you bastard, if you keep this up, the dean will never let you off. Wang Xinro was the only person in the institute who knew my true identity, but these words only earned Xie's even more merciless ridicule. He sneered contemptuously, his tone dripping with disdain. The dean won't let me off. How laughable. Sinyu is the only heiress of Lu Medical Group. If anything happens to her, the dean would never spare me. I struggled to crawl out from the gap between the cabinet and the floor. The wound on my leg tore open, blood staining my entire body, but I couldn't care about that anymore. I had to survive. Seeing that time was running out, I suddenly shouted at Wang Xinro, "Don't beg him, run." I will never forget the moment in my past life when Xie poured gasoline over me. His eyes gleaming with madness, not a trace of love remained, only overwhelming hatred. He ignored my screams completely, and even disregarded the child in my womb, setting me ablaze with a single flame. Only then did I realize that all these years, he had blamed me for Lu Sinyu's death. He hated me so deeply. Before I could snap out of that heart-wrenching memory, Wang Xinro had already rushed into the flames without hesitation. "Wani, hold on." The thick smoke made me cough uncontrollably. Blurring my vision, only Wang Xinro's petite figure stood starkly clear amidst the firelight. "Are you fucking insane? Get out!" Ignoring my furious shouts, Wang Xinro gritted her teeth and struggled to lift half of my body, dragging me step by step toward the lab exit. The scorching air burned our skin. I could even see a lock of her hair singed, its ends still glowing with embers. Yet she seemed impervious to the pain as she kept pulling me forward. Looking at her smoke-blackened profile, my heart was filled with mixed emotions. With great difficulty, I raised my hand and glanced at my watch. Time was running out. If we didn't get out soon, we'd both be done for. Taking a deep breath, I mustered my strength and shouted at her, "Xinro, when I count down from 3, we're diving out. Don't worry about me, you hear?" Wang Xinro replied without turning her head, "Go ahead and shout." But I'm definitely not letting go. My heart warmed, and without further ado, I fixed my gaze firmly on the laboratory door, the beacon of hope for survival. 3, 2, 1, jump, I roared with all my strength, then without hesitation grabbed Wang Xinro and lunged toward the door. Boom, almost the instant we rushed out, an ear-splitting explosion erupted behind us. The massive shockwave sent me sprawling to the ground. I felt my eardrums were about to burst. My vision went blank. I could see nothing. Hear nothing, only endless ringing echoing in my mind. Wani, are you okay? Can you hear me?" It felt like an eternity before Wang Xinro's anxious voice finally reached my ears in fragments. I struggled to open my eyes. "I'm fine, it's just my leg." Wang Xinro followed my gaze downward. "It's not pretty, don't look, wait here for me." With these words, Wang Xinro hastily ran off. Before long, Wang Xinro rushed up with several colleagues carrying a stretcher. When they saw the injury on my leg, their faces paled, and one young male colleague couldn't help but exclaim, "Oh my God, how many stitches will this need?" Every part of my body ached terribly, as if it had been shattered, yet I remained fully conscious. As we passed by an emergency department, I caught sight of Xie. He was gently holding Lu Sinyu's shoulders, whispering comforting words, as if nothing had happened, as if he had completely forgotten about me. A head nurse who usually got along well with me examined my injuries while shaking her head sympathetically. "Wani, what on earth have you done to yourself? There are so many fractures, it might take a whole year to recover." Her voice trembled with tears as she spoke. Thank goodness it didn't injure the right hand. After recovering, surgery can still be performed." I managed a weak smile, wanting to say something, but the pain left me speechless. The head nurse lowered her voice even further, as if afraid someone might hear, and muttered quietly, "That Lu Sinyu, I heard she only suffered minor scratches. Look how nervous Xie is. TSK. Wang Xinro couldn't hold back her anger upon hearing this. Pointing at Xiesen's nose, she yelled, "Xiesen, you're fucking disgusting." Before Wang Xinro could finish speaking, Lu Sinyu let out a few delicate coughs. Her voice soft and frail. "Xiesen, I'm feeling a bit tired." Xiesun immediately responded with tender concern, "Sinyu, just hold on a little longer, our colleagues will be here soon." Then, he raised his head, glanced at me, and said impatiently to Wang Xinro, "Wani is fine now, isn't she? What's between Wani and me is none of your business. Can't you just mind your own affairs?" I stared fixedly at Xiesun's disgusting face and said word by word, "From now on, we're done, let's break up." Wang Xinro nodded heavily, "Good riddance." "What's the point reasoning with a beast?" Xiesun froze for a moment, seemingly not expecting me to say that. He frowned impatiently and said, "Zhongwani, what are you up to now? Playing games with me?" I sneered, "Playing games with you? You think you're worth it?" I struggled to hold back my tears, staring at Lu Sinyu behind him, and asked word by word, "You'd rather save another woman than me? Is this what you call a boyfriend?" Lu Sinyu's tears came instantly, weeping pitifully, "Wani, How could you say such things about Siesun? He just knew you were stronger than me, he had more faith in you, he simply chose to save the one who needed him more. The hospital room descended into chaos, Siesun's accusations, Lucinyu's sobs, all tangled together, drawing countless onlookers' gazes from outside. Sigh, the goddess does have a point, she's so delicate and must need someone to take care of her. That's right, dear. Sia is doing this for everyone's good, why can't Dr. Zhong just let it go? Exactly, Miss Liu is the heiress of Liu Medical Group, saving her is more important. At that moment, my father rushed back from abroad. Seeing him, Siesun suddenly changed his demeanor and approached him. Director, there was an explosion in the lab just now. I risked my life to save Sinyu. Sinyu said she could strengthen the cooperation between Liu's medical and our hospital. My father's face darkened. Where is Zhongwani? Siesun, thinking the dean was about to hold someone accountable, quickly explained, Dean, at that time, it was only her and Wani in the lab. Sinyu is certain she made no mistakes. This incident is entirely Wani's responsibility. She was just rescued and isn't seriously injured, but I suggest not letting her participate in experiments anymore. Sinyu can handle it alone. My father's face grew increasingly grim as I lay on the hospital bed, sneering inwardly, just wait. Without me, Zhongwani, you, Siesun, will have endless suffering to endure. Before I could clearly see my father's expression, I fell into a deep coma. When I woke up again, it was already dusk the next day. My limbs were encased in thick casts and bandages, immobile, yet I felt as if I had been reborn. Wang Shinro rushed to my bedside, her face exhausted but unable to conceal her excitement. I wanted to raise my hand to respond to her, but the movement sent a sharp pain through my wound. Seeing me like this, she immediately broke down, tears falling uncontrollably. You fool, do you even know how badly you're hurt? I managed a weak smile. At least, I got my life back. In this life, I owe nothing to Siesun, neither my dad nor I will die. You, Wang Shinro laughed through her tears, grabbing tissues as she spoke. I've already told your dad everything that happened. When he heard the news, he was so angry he's calling an accident accountability meeting tomorrow. Hearing about my dad, I couldn't hold back my tears either. In my past life, because of me, Dad ended up. Shinro, I tried to study my emotions. There's one more thing I need to ask you. Go ahead, what is it? The lab, before the accident, the surveillance footage from the lab. Help me retrieve it. Wang Shinro gently touched my hair and said reassuringly, don't worry, I've already had someone retrieve it. There was a minor hiccup in the middle, but don't worry, I've already taken care of it. I looked at her, overwhelmed by a flood of guilt. In my past life, Siesun had brainwashed me into believing that Wang Shinro was jealous of me, targeting me at every turn. I even had a huge fight with her and severed our friendship, dying without ever getting the chance to apologize. Looking back now, I can only blame myself for being blind and foolish. Mistaking a fisheye for a pearl, I was just about to close my eyes and rest when Siesun arrived. Behind him was Lucinyu, standing perfectly unharmed, not a single hair out of place, as she flirtatiously tossed her locks, drawing everyone's attention. Meanwhile, there I was, wrapped layer upon layer in plaster, unable to move a muscle. Wang Shinro took a deep breath and sneered, the goddess seems perfectly fine, huh? Siesun ignored her and instead came over to grab my hand, which I dodged with disgust. Not only did he not feel he was wrong, he even smiled and said, Wani, see, you're fine after all. Sinyu said she would strengthen the cooperation between Liu Medical and our hospital. I have hope for a promotion. Aren't you happy for me? I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. Happy? I almost died in the lab, and you want me to be happy? Lucinyu then put on an act, sighing theatrically as her eyes darkened. I never thought you'd be so selfish, willing to ruin Siesun's future over baseless jealousy. Honestly, I really looked down on you. I stared at her coldly and said, do you know what it means to have your future completely ruined? Let me tell you, the moment Siesun chose not to save me, his future was over. Siesun pointed at me, his brows furrowed so tightly they could crush a fly. Zhongwani, Sinyu came here out of kindness to see you, even intending to apologize. And this is the attitude you give her? Don't forget, I'm your boyfriend. Instead of being grateful, you're actually cursing me, with this lousy job of yours. How much money can you even make? Everything I've done is for our future. I felt increasingly disgusted by the man before me. Suppressing the fury inside, I said to Siesun, don't forget, we've already broken up. Get out of here. The commotion in the ward grew louder, and people outside started chattering away. I say, now that Dr. Zhong is fine, just let it go. What could be more important than your boyfriend's future? If it were me, I'd endure a bit of hardship. After all, once Dr. Xie succeeds, I'd be able to enjoy the benefits too. Wang Shinro suddenly turned her head and angrily pointed at those nosy people outside, shouting, stop gossiping. That's not how it happened. The dean will hold an accountability meeting for the accident tomorrow. When the truth comes out, we'll see who gets humiliated. Siesun. who had always treated Wang Shinro as invisible, finally looked at her properly, frowning as he asked, "What did you say? What accident accountability?" Wang Shinro stood with her hands on her hips, glaring at Lu Xinyu as she spoke. "Exactly. How did the lab accident happen? Some people know perfectly well." Lu Xinyu visibly trembled at these words, her originally fair complexion instantly drained of color. She looked as if she might faint at any moment, exuding an air of fragility. Seeing this, Xiesun quickly stepped forward to support her, his heart aching as he softly reassured her, "Don't be afraid, Xinyu. It's all right, I believe you." Lu Xinyu leaned into Xiesun's embrace, lifting her head pitifully with tear-filled eyes. Her voice quivered as she spoke. "Xiesun, I believe you wouldn't trust their baseless accusations, right? That day in the lab, I clearly warned Wani." She deliberately paused here, as if recalling something terrifying, her body trembling uncontrollably again, haltingly. She continued, "I warned her to be careful, but she wouldn't listen, said I was meddling. Then the explosion happened. I really tried my best. I really wanted to save her." The hallway had just quieted down, but upon hearing Lu Xinyu's words, the condemning voices against me started up again. "So it was Dr. Zhong's operational mistake that caused the explosion. No wonder Dr. Xia didn't save her. After all, Goddess Lu was completely innocent." Xiesun's heart ached even more seeing Lu Xinyu's fragile and helpless appearance. His anger instantly ignited. He abruptly turned his head, pointing at my nose and roared, "Zhongwani, you refuse to admit your mistakes and still dare to act righteous. If you apologize to Xinyu now, I can put in a good word for you at tomorrow's meeting, so you won't." Wang Shinro and I exchanged a knowing smile as I cut him off. "If the two of you kneel and apologize to me now, I might also spare you some dignity at tomorrow's meeting," Lu Xinyu said with a faint, mocking smile. "Wani, I'm only doing this for your own good. Why can't you appreciate it? I didn't want to deal with the two people in front of me anymore, so I pressed the nurse call button." The head nurse hurriedly pushed through the crowd and came in, asking, "What's wrong?" I pointed at Xiesun and Lu Xinyu and said, "I remember Dr. Xia and Dr. Lu aren't from this department, are they? Why are they so blatantly neglecting their duties?" The head nurse had never liked Xiesun to begin with. With a cold expression, she said, "Dr. Xia, you'd better stop disturbing Dr. Zhong here. She's just finished operating all night." Seeing that I wasn't intimidated at all, Xiesun pointed at me and stammered "you" for a long time before angrily taking Lu Xinyu's hand and leaving. Shinro looked at me for a long time and finally said, "I think you've changed." I tugged at the corner of my mouth, unsure whether it was a bitter smile or self-mockery. Having died once, I finally saw Xiesun for what he truly is, whether man or dog. This epiphany came at quite a price. After handling urgent matters, my father rushed to my hospital room to see me. His eyes were bloodshot, his face unshaven, and exhaustion and worry were written all over his face. "Wani, how could you? Dad just went abroad not long ago. How could?" His voice choked with sobs, unable to continue speaking. His trembling hand gently caressed the gauze on my face, his expression filled with heartache. Looking at my father, who had aged so much before my eyes, I could no longer hold back. My tears burst forth like a dam breaking. In my past life, it was all because I mistakenly trusted Xiesun that led to the Zhong family's hospital, built over decades, falling into others' hands. All our assets were lost, unable to bear the blow. My father fell gravely ill and passed away not long after, and Xiesun, stepping over the Zhong family's bones, soared high and became the rising star of the medical world. But now, he's still alive. I gripped his hand tightly and choked out, "Shinro must have told you everything. The lab explosion. But, Dad, that was the lab you gave me. How could I not cherish it? It definitely wasn't caused by me." My father's voice was low and hoarse, filled with suppressed anger. "My dear daughter, don't worry. Whether she's truly the heiress of Lu Medical or not, your father isn't afraid. I won't let you take the blame for no reason." Early the next morning, Wang Shinro wheeled me into the meeting venue in my wheelchair. Though called a meeting, it felt more like a struggle session. Xiesun and Lu Xinyu sat across from me, each looking more indignant than the other, as if I were the one guilty of heinous crimes. The conference hall was packed with hospital executives, with my father seated at the front, his face grim. When I entered, a flicker of heartache flashed in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by sternness. "Dr. Lu." My father stared intently at Lu Xinyu. "At that time, it was just you and Dr. Zhong in the lab. Are you saying it was Dr. Zhong's operational error?" Lu Xinyu trembled slightly, as if frightened, her voice as soft as water. "Director, I swear it's true. I did remind Dr. Zhong." A reminder. My father suddenly slammed the table, startling Lu Xinyu so much that tears nearly fell. "Do you know what the consequences are for lying?" Xiesun frowned and immediately stood up to defend his goddess. "Director, how can you be so sure that Dr. Lu is lying?" My father gave him a cold glance. "It's not your turn to speak yet." Xiesun immediately fell silent and awkwardly sat back down. Although he had some reputation in the hospital, He didn't dare utter a word in front of my father. Lu Sinyu's eyes welled up with tears as she said pitifully, "Director, how could I ever joke about the Lu family's reputation?" The Lu family. The conference room erupted instantly. Those high-ranking executives who had been drowsy suddenly perked up, whispering and discussing among themselves, "Is she really the heiress of Lu Medical? Lu Medical is our hospital's biggest partner. If we offend them, I think it's better to make a big deal small and a small deal nothing." That's right, after all. No lives were lost, just give Dr. Zhong a disciplinary action, and let's consider the matter closed. My father turned pale with anger, pointing at the executives who spoke and roared, "Are you saying that because Dr. Lu is the daughter of some partner company, Dr. Zhong, who did nothing wrong, should bear all the blame?" Looking at these people, I felt a deep sorrow in my heart. They actually pushed me into the abyss for their own gain. The executives exchanged glances, their eyes evasive, while my father's face turned darker than the bottom of a pot. With a sudden wave of his hand, Wang Xinro immediately understood and turned on the large screen in the meeting room. High-definition footage instantly filled the entire screen. It was the surveillance recording from before the lab incident. Lu Sinyu's face instantly paled, her lips trembling as she shook her head repeatedly. "Impossible, this can't be. Didn't the hospital explicitly forbid installing cameras in the lab?" My father gave her a cold glance. "This lab was originally my private gift to my daughter. Do I need to report to you what I install?" Sieson turned to me in shock. "What?" I remained expressionless and uttered coldly, "Shinra told you." The air seemed to freeze for a few seconds, so quiet you could hear a pin drop, until someone brave finally spoke up trembling. "Director, you mean Zhong Wani is your daughter?" Wang Xinro ignored them and continued operating the mouse, playing the surveillance footage. In the footage, I was wearing a white lab coat and a mask, conducting the experiment methodically. Everything appeared completely normal. Suddenly, the experimental container in front of me spontaneously combusted without warning, flames shooting upward as thick smoke billowed out. Seeing this, Sieson immediately pointed at the screen and said, "Right here, Wani. You must have made an operational mistake, but don't worry, I can take the punishment for you." Lu Sinyu visibly let out a sigh of relief, tears welling up in her eyes again, appearing utterly fragile and helpless. "I really didn't want to embarrass Wani like this. It's all my fault. If only I'd reminded her earlier." My father suddenly slammed the table, startling Lu Sinyu so much that she trembled all over. But those fence-sitting executives had long been intimidated by Lu Sinyu's acting skills and the reputation of the Lu family. One by one, they lowered their heads and said, "Director, under these circumstances, perhaps we should just let it go. One is the heiress of Lu Medical Group, the other is your own daughter. If this escalates, it won't benefit anyone." I admit, for a brief moment, I began to doubt myself, but this doubt only lasted a few seconds. After all, I've conducted this experiment hundreds of times. I could do it correctly with my eyes closed. Moreover, my experiment wasn't even flammable. Even if there was a mistake, it couldn't possibly have caused spontaneous combustion. Wang Xinro gave me a reassuring look, her lips curling slightly as she continued, "Distinguished guests, you only saw Wani's experimental container combust spontaneously, but did you actually see what she was doing at the time?" Indeed, there were quite a few instruments placed in front of my experimental container, obstructing my movements, so only the upper half of my operations could be seen in the surveillance footage. But Wang Xinro suddenly zoomed in several times on the glass cabinet behind my lab bench. In the footage, Lu Sinyu appeared sneakily in front of my lab bench and, taking advantage of my distraction, secretly poured an unidentified reagent into my experimental container. The entire action took no more than a few seconds. I clenched my fists tightly, burning with rage. "Lu Sinyu." My father pointed at Lu Sinyu and demanded, "What else do you have to say for yourself?" Lu Sinyu suddenly turned pale and collapsed to the ground. "This must be a misunderstanding. No, it's Wang Xinro. You maliciously edited the video, isn't that right?" At that moment, my father said something into his phone, and suddenly the conference room door was violently pushed open. My father's assistant walked in with a grim expression, followed by a noblewoman whose face was livid with anger. The noblewoman swept a sharp gaze across the conference room before finally locking eyes with Lu Sinyu. "Miss Lu, the heiress of Lu Medical Group, P. President Lu." The executives sprang to their feet in unison, trembling as they looked at my father. "Director, perhaps we should settle this privately. Our hospital truly cannot afford to lose Lu Medical Group's support." "Exactly. Look, she's come here personally." My father sneered, lit a cigarette, and leisurely blew a smoke ring. "President Lu, take a good look. Is this really your daughter?" Hearing the words President Lu, Lu Sinyu's face turned even paler. She kept her head lowered, her body trembling slightly, not daring to meet the noblewoman's gaze. The noblewoman glanced at her disdainfully and snorted coldly. My daughter is still studying abroad for her master's degree. Today, I'm here to see just who has the audacity to impersonate my daughter. With that, the noblewoman grabbed Lu Sinyu's chin, forcing her to look up. You're not bad looking. But how can your heart be so wicked? The executives, who had been worrying about Lu Sinyu just moments ago, now seemed like completely different people. How dare they? They actually had the audacity to deceive our hospital. People like this should be thrown in jail. They almost got our director's daughter falsely accused. Absolutely outrageous. Siesun originally wanted to say something more, but Lu Sinyu's glare scared him into retreating step by step. In the end, he could only choke out a tearful sentence. Lu Sinyu, how could you treat Wani like this? To be honest, I just feel utterly disgusted. This man is hypocritical to the extreme. Lu Sinyu burst into sudden, hysterical laughter, as if she'd heard the most ridiculous joke in the world. Siesun, what right do you have to judge me? Haven't you been reveling in my lies too? She shook off the noblewoman's hand and pointed accusingly at Siesun's face, shouting, ever since you thought I was the heiress of Lu Medical Group, haven't you been trailing behind me like a begging dog? Am I wrong? Ha ha ha. Your pretentious act of saving me was just for your own benefit too, you sanctimonious hypocrite. Though I despise Lu Sinyu deeply, I have to admit, she was right. Siesun is nothing but a complete hypocrite. As the truth came to light, several uniformed police officers entered and said to Lu Sinyu, Miss Lu, you're suspected of intentional assault and fraud. Please come with us. Lu Sinyu turned deathly pale, her body swaying unsteadily. She looked at Siesun in terror, crying out, Siesun, save me, help me. However, Siesun just coldly turned his head away, as if he didn't know her at all. Lu Sinyu collapsed to the ground in despair, like a withered flower. After Lu Sinyu was taken away by the police, the people in the meeting room scattered in an instant, leaving only me, Wang Shinro, and Siesun standing there like a wooden post. Wani, I'm sorry, I was also deceived by Lu Sinyu. Siesun suddenly rushed up to me, his face full of guilt, as if the person who had coldly stood by earlier wasn't him at all. Believe me, I love you. How disgusting. Take a look at yourself first. Wang Shinro pushed him away disdainfully, patting her hands as if she had touched something filthy. I stared coldly at Siesun, curling my lips into a mocking smile. Lu Sinyu might need a dog, but Zhong Wani certainly doesn't. Lu Sinyu's case was quickly brought to court, and she was eventually sentenced to 1 year in prison with her medical license revoked. However, due to good behavior behind bars, she was released early. As for Siesun, my father kicked him out, and no other hospital dared to hire him. He went from being a somewhat renowned doctor to a rat scurrying in the streets, despised by all. A year later, my health had improved significantly, and with my father's approval, I returned to work at the hospital. Little did I expect that on my very first day back, I would run into Siesun again. There he was, wearing a baseball cap and a face mask, sneaking into the hospital like a thief. Wang Shinro curled her lips in disgust. Does he really think dressing like that would make him unrecognizable? I froze for a moment. Wang Shinro leaned in with a mischievous grin and said, You didn't know, did you? He's got that disease. TSK, our hospital is the authority in this field. He has no choice but to come here for treatment. What poetic justice. I couldn't help but sneer. That disease really suits him. As I was leaving work in the evening and walking to the parking lot, Siesun suddenly appeared in front of me. Startled, I instinctively let out a sharp ah. Seeing this, he quickly moved to help me up, but I instinctively dodged. He scratched his head and said with an awkward smile, I heard from the nurse today that you were back. So, Wani, do you know how long I've been looking for you? We haven't broken up yet. How could you leave me? I took a deep breath and said expressionlessly, I told you we were over a year ago. Stop looking for me. Siesun suddenly grabbed my wrist tightly, right on my old injury, making me gasp in pain. Let go. He only tightened his grip, grinding his teeth. Zhongwani, if it weren't for your father, how could I have ended up like this? Shouldn't you take responsibility for me? I sneered. You're ridiculous. Getting a filthy disease and then telling me I should take responsibility. Have some shame. Will you? His face instantly turned as ugly as pig's liver, and in a fit of rage, he raised his hand to hit me. At that moment, a pink handbag slammed hard into his face. Siesun, you bastard. I turned my head sharply. It was Lu Sinyu. Having been in prison for over half a year, she wasn't as polished as before. Her face was now filled with fury. Lu Sinyu pointed at his nose and cursed loudly. I came looking for you the moment I got out, and you fucking treat me like a free whore to use and discard. How dare you sneak around to find that bitch Xiongwani behind my back? Sieson was stunned by the blow, taking a few seconds to recover before shoving Lucian away. Get lost. Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror? You think you're worthy of comparing yourself to Wani? Wani is the dean's daughter. What the hell are you? Sieson is truly beyond saving. I sneered and deliberately said loudly, Sieson, your filthy disease can't be delayed. Remember to come for follow-ups every day, don't infect others. What? Lucian's eyes widened instantly as she screamed in disbelief. Sieson, you actually have a filthy disease. Sieson, you've ruined me. With that, the two began brawling in the parking lot, paying them no mind. I got straight into the car, slammed the door shut with a bang, and locked it. The two of them went at it like rabid dogs, the argument escalating wildly. Rolling my eyes, I directly tagged the security captain in the workgroup chat. Two mad dogs fighting in the parking lot. Come handle it ASAP. The moment the message was sent, a deafening bang echoed through the air. I jerked my head up just in time to see Lucian collapsed in a pool of blood. A car parked beside her. The driver stood frozen in shock, clutching his head and screaming, "Oh my God!" Sieson turned to bolt, only to be grabbed by the security guard who'd rushed to the scene. All the hospital colleagues came rushing over. Lucian died on the spot. Rumor has it she was 5 weeks pregnant. Meanwhile, Sieson was clearly captured by the parking lot surveillance cameras pushing Lucian out. In the end, he was convicted of intentional homicide. As a doctor, I know his condition is incurable. May he rot slowly in prison for the rest of his life. Serves her right. That's all for today's story. If you've listened this far, please leave happy every day in the comments. A little light wishes everyone happiness every day.